Draft physics video number 4, I believe, in the Ken Wheeler series. Yes. So this one, he did one on the a sand dollar, and I didn't bother with this one. I mean, more nature's mystery solved, as if this is solving some sort of mystery. I mean, sand dollars are a variety of starfish, quite obviously. You know, an evolved version or de-evolved version, either way you want to look at it. I don't know which one, but it doesn't really matter. I would assume it's the more fancier version of a starfish, you know, creating a shell. Anyway, but it's just a starfish. I mean, and this pattern is just the same pattern as like the Michelangelo human being thing. There's nothing spectacular about these ratios. There's no mystery solved here. It's geometry, and atoms fall into patterns of geometry that work for a process, like moving forward, you know, front and back. You know, pointy arrow versus flat arrow. Works better, certain geometry. No mystery, nothing. By me, of course. I mean, you know, it's just so. But there was just nothing in the video. There was no science in it anywhere. Anyway, so this one's magnetism, the deep secrets to understanding. So I'm sure there won't be any of that. I didn't watch it, so we'll both be surprised. Not. See how many names he drops. Okay, gotta turn the volume up for sure. And look at that, he has a little fireplace on his $5,000 computer. Isn't that nice? Yeah.
One of the hardest tasks that I've had, and it's so brilliantly simple in my mind, the most simple thing.
Yeah, right. Again, so he never describes this brilliantly simple thing in any kind of rational terms, like showing how something moves from point A to point B. Nothing like that.
Things are the most complex to explain. The same thing is true in ancient Greek. Many ancient Greek terms are without translation.
Yes, and who cares? I mean, vocabulary is just for the utility of it. The idea is to have words that actually have definitions. Now, I know lots of people like to have words like love that don't have any rational definition and, you know, just too ambiguous to be of any use at all. But that's what logical people say. Let's avoid that and try to use more explicit and more accurate terminology, not convoluted and words that most people don't even know what they mean.
Don't argue with me thinking that they do, because they don't have a translation. Euristos dias, nous.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, so it's so important that we know what the people who couldn't build that outhouse were thinking.
Ananke. Wow, the list goes on and on. These are
Pookie.
ineffable terms of hardcore nonlinear Greek metaphysics.
Oh, yes, right. So again, somehow we got this old, ancient, brilliant philosophy that's been buried in the dirt for billions of years. I mean, it's just such a pile of shit. They were just people running from fucking rain. I mean, they didn't know what anything was. Thunder scared the fuck out of them.
That require, literally, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic.
Oh, yes, you do mean to be exactly that. You're just way over the top in everything you fucking goddamn do.
Require like multi-dimensional comprehension of something that cannot be, you know, you can't stick your finger on it. The same thing with the Greek. Math is completely different than arithmos.
So again, all of this hasn't even come close to talking about anything meaningfully, scientifically. Just this bullshit. Somehow I can't explain magnetism to you because it's all in ancient jargon and ancient notions of reality, and you know, all you modern people are just clueless because, you know, you knew about like atomic structure and, you know, lightning. You know, it's not the gods throwing, you know, death rays at you.
Ancient Greeks, specifically the Platonists and Neoplatonists, the hardcore monistic Platonists, understood that arithmos was something totally different than math. Math is just bean counting. In ancient Greek arithmos, 1 is not even a number. 1 is the principle, and that is...
Yeah, whatever. So that makes a lot of sense, right? 1 is a principle. Like 0 is a principle. Everything's a principle. Okay, fine, whatever. Stupid.
How it should be. This has nothing to do with numerology. I have no connection to any of that stuff at all, okay? So please, God, don't ask me.
Yes, you made up your own fucking loony religion. Got it.
Ask me questions like that. 1 is not a number. 1 is the principle.
No, it's a number. 1, just like the 2 is a number. 2, it's not a principle. Things have its quality. It's a quality something has. Oneness, two-ness, three-ness. Quality that something has. Falls into a category.
There's also, you could say chaos, but there's the notion that there's a zero. It's a placeholder. There's no such thing. Ka, ancient Zen.
I mean, so again, no such thing is just kind of silly to say there's not a condition where there's no nesses. No one-ness, no two-ness, no three-ness. No nesses. 0. Just as valid.
It's great, Polly, very great. The notion of emptiness or void or null, placeholder, where we're talking about magnetism. There's no such thing as a number 0. 0 is not a number, and 1
Who cares? What does this have to do with magnetism? Please get to the subject, please, please, please.
is not a number. And the only way you can understand those is not with a linear mind, but with a nonlinear mind that's able to use and employ retroductive thinking methodologies.
Right, so you have to have nonlinear brain that does retroduction this way, perpendicular. That's magnetism.
Eventually have to write. Nobody's written a book on retroduction before, and I will be the first person to do
Oh, great. Yes, please do that. Fascinating. And put in all the name dropping. Give me what everybody said on the subject of retroduction. I'd love to hear what Benjamin Franklin thought of retroduction.
So, specifically as regards magnetism, humanity is, of course, completely brain dead on what
Yeah, so whatever. And you're what? Brain enabled on magnetism? Yeah, sorry. That sounds funny, and it is.
magnetism is. And I've had people try to argue that with me, and if they can't even get that.
No, you don't argue with anybody, okay? You evade arguments. You just delete them and pretend they don't happen.
Far, then I have nothing to say to them. It's like, listen, you go to the largest magnet maker website on Earth and go to the frequently asked questions page and say, how does a magnet work?
The magnet makers aren't necessarily the people who know anything about the subject, frankly. I mean, that just doesn't mean anything. People who mix ingredients doesn't mean they know anything about chemistry. It just doesn't.
And they will tell you. These are the people that are making billions of dollars selling powerful magnet. We have no idea how magnet works.
I don't know if they're making billions of dollars. I don't really, frankly, I don't think the Chinese are making all that much money on their magnets.
It's a mystery. Even they will tell you that, which is good. It's okay not to know stuff. I have no problem with ignorance. Okay? What I have a problem with...
Well, it seems like you have a problem being ignorant, which is not knowing it, and that's a problem.
The stupidity. Stupidity is where you presume to know something, you spit out a bunch of crap, and, you shut...
Yes, exactly what you do. That's exactly what you do. You pretend to know something and spit crap. Stuff I can't put on a piece of paper at all. Like absolutely nothing useful that explains why two magnets move together or why two magnets move apart. Not a single thing I can draw. Diagramming the process that you say is magnetism. Show me the process. Step A, step B, step C, step D. How does the magnet do it?
Cover that on stupider people than yourself, which is what academia does. Every branch of science in academia proper, which is a gigantic pool of corrupt dumbasses, is...
Yes, they're bad, but you're fucking worse. So that's the joke here. You're sitting there complaining about them, and you're even more naked, Emperor.
I always thought that their crap didn't stink, and they got it right. We got it right! And 30, 40, 50 years later...
Well, again, that's just nonsense. They really don't have a concept. So where they say they have it right, they're not doing that on magnetism. Feynman didn't even do that on magnetism. He just said, look, we can't explain, this is the best we can do, but there's a point where that's all you can do.
Depends on what it was. The guys after them, like, they had no idea what the hell they're talking about. And today it's no different. Most fundamental...
Yeah, well, today is different because I'm here, and I have a much better explanation than yours, and I can actually diagram how the function works, that the magnet is a filter, and it's filtering this field of energy, and it comes out segregated, and that creates all kind of potential for causing different effects depending on the orientation of the filter.
Principle in the universe, and of course science has never defined a field because a field is not particles, and they cannot...
Well, again, it says you. The fact that the word field is understood differently by different people, in the sense that some people think, well, if you say there's a field, you have to say what the field is of. I would be one of those kind of people. Field, it has to be a something, not a nothing. So a bent space field, well, that's kind of silly. Electromagnetic field, and there isn't any field, that's kind of silly.
Quantify a field, because here enters the word quantity, quantification, i.e. quantum. Quantum is atomism, by the way. If you don't know what atomism is, then you need to slap the person that gave you a degree either in college or high school. If you don't know what atomism is, then you got a problem.
Yes, he associates that with some sort of materialism. Yes, that things are made of stuff that is distinct from nothing. There is something and then there's nothing. So there's places where there's nothing and then there's places where there are something. You see? He doesn't believe that. He believes it's all a bunch of something, I guess, and it's the counter something that makes stuff happen.
But most of you probably don't know what it is because you were never taught the really important stuff in school. Important stuff is
Alright, so he still hasn't gotten to anything close to any kind of description of any kind of mechanical process.
You see, philosophy is way too connected to religion, but religion and hardcore, not Western existentialist BS philosophy. But
yeah, that's right. Religion hardcore, super unicorns. I guess that's where he's heading eventually. You know, be a doctor in unicornology.
Hardcore philosophy is monistic. You know, it's not Western existentialist crap like.
Yeah, well, whatever. The silly religion is always silly religion, no matter what you call it. Mystic or Platonist or Gnostic, it doesn't matter. It's all nonsense.
Kant and Hume and the rest of these brain-dead Western dumbasses, you weren't taught how to think this stuff because it's too close to religion. But religion is just secularized metaphysics. We're talking about hardcore metaphysics here. You weren't taught...
Religion is secularized metaphysics. Now, somehow that makes sense to somebody somewhere. That's like when he called, like, water, he called it... something like hydroxinate or something, or oxide. You know, when it's the other way around, you know, it's H2, two H's, not two O's.
That stuff because the implications are leaning towards religious, and that's why you were never taught really anything important in school or college. And,
still hasn't gotten anywhere. Yes, you're taught the mechanics in the sense that they give you some idea of what magnets do, but they don't give you much idea of how they do it. So, and you're saying they're doing something fundamentally wrong when at least they're not just making crap up like you are.
all education has become secularized, but the really important stuff, the stuff that makes you learn how to think, you know, it's all hardcore metaphysics. Specifically regarding magnetism, humanity thinks that a magnet has poles, and magnetism is about attraction and repulsion and...
Yes, those are the fundamental elements of the function that makes a magnet distinct from other crap, is the fact that it clearly has two ends that do two different things, and yes, attraction and repulsion is what it makes happen, yes.
No, that's not how magnets works, that's not what magnetism is.
Right, so we're to believe that if somebody says water is good for washing hands or for drinking or, you know, no, that's not really what it is. Fuck you. That's what it is.
This, a magnet doesn't have poles. Well, sure, it's got poles. If a magnet had poles, then you can subdivide a magnet. Like, here's the North Pole, here's the South Pole. Just split it right down the middle. It's like, that shit doesn't work. I know most...
Yeah, so again, and this is something like the science he ignores has a pretty rational explanation for. The magnet is made out of little magnets inside, and they're similar to the little magnets you can just find. I don't know what I did with all my magnets. But anyway, you know, you stack a bunch of little magnets and they'll do the same thing. They'll create a big magnet. They won't do it as efficiently because, yeah, they can't, on an atomic level, line up perfectly. So they're still individual magnets. But the idea is valid. This guy knows that truth. He knows that he stacks two magnets or three magnets on top of each other, he'll end up with a big magnet with two poles, and there'll be a new line of not so magnetic in the middle.
None of you have ever done this before, but the field inside of any and every magnet, whether it's a samarium cobalt, ferrite, neodymium iron boron, it's incommensurable. Now,
there we go. So yeah, so what's the point of that word? Let's go find out if if Newton ever used the word incommensurable. Let's see if, what's his name, is his hero, Tesla. Let's see if Tesla ever used the word incommensurable.
Important word that you're going to go look it up on dictionary.com. You're going to come back with a bullshit definition. I'm talking about the original hardcore definition of it.
Yes, right. So use a word that nobody uses and that you have to go back thousands of years to find out what it means. And then pretend you're doing something intelligent. That's how intelligent people communicate, by using code words. No, it's not. That's how people are trying to fool other people. That's what used car salesmen do. You know, they'll talk about the turbocharger or something.
Incommensurable. If you could understand something really simple, which is not that simple because I'm into hardcore optics, by the way, like a hologram. Not a holographic positive like you see on your credit card, but a holographic negative that you got someone's face. And it's not a positive, but a negative, which most of you, almost none of you, have seen a holographic negative. Like someone's face, so that holographic negative. Well, if you cut out a tiny portion, like way down here, like the person's face is up here, but there's nothing down, you cut out that tiny little portion, and you project the laser through it, you'll see the entire face again. It's like, well, how the hell is that possible? It is incommensurable. It is point non-specific.
It's point non-specific. So he defines incommensurable by point non-specific, kind of implying that the magnets have something to do with holograms in terms of their function, that they're not simple, that they're very complex, like creating a hologram. No.
There is no divisor line between north and south poles. So a magnet doesn't have poles at all. The only thing that actually defines a magnet is field coherency.
Okay, so again, field coherency defines a magnet. So we don't get to understand how exactly the magnet creates this coherency. And again, this is something regular science has already explained with atoms and domains lining up. And it's perfectly rational when you think about it. You know, that it's just a bunch of little magnets. Electrons and protons are the poles, they're the dipoles of magnetism. And when you line them up, you create a magnet. Not complicated.
And that field is incommensurable, which means that it does not exist in any place. It is a pressure mediation. What's a pressure?
It doesn't exist in any place. Again, what does that mean to somebody? It obviously exists in some general location, like it's in the fucking magnet. Like my consciousness is in my fucking brain. I mean, it would be nice if people could localize it to, oh, well, it's generally speaking, somewhere in the area of my body. Well, I guess we know that magnetism is somewhere in the area. The incommensurability is happening somewhere in the area of the magnet. Fuck's sake.
Mediation, that's like sitting in a bathtub full of water. You pull the cork and that water's going to go down the bathtub, right? Right. That's just pressure mediation.
Yes, well, that explains a magnet. So that's what he gives us as an explanation. And then he mocks Einstein's stupid bent space. So, you know, and this is even less than that. Pull the drain, so somehow the magnet has a drain and it pulls it by its own volition. I decided to pull my drain and become a magnet.
Mediation. When you have a magnet, you say, well, there's a North Pole, there's a South Pole. I've got some magnetic viewing film like that fat tattooed asshole Kim has, and I can see there's a North Pole, here's a South. It's not located there.
Alright, so again, does that makes sense to these idiots? You know, 100 thumbs ups so far for just an idiotic statement. You know, the poles of the magnet aren't in the material of the magnet and in the structure of the magnet. Sure they're not. The way it's oriented. I mean, all the triangles in the same order, so to speak. You can sort of understand that it would all be pointy looking from this direction and it would all be flat looking from this direction. No, it can't be anything mechanical like that. No.
There's nothing located there. There's not a North Pole over here, and I said, sure there is, I could see it. No, that's a pressure mediation, because if you take that magnet...
Yes, right. It's if you take the magnet apart, what you'll find is that no matter where you cut it, you end up with a thing with, like I say, if I make a bunch of these little triangles, you can understand, right? No matter where I would cut it, I'm just going to end up with, you know, pointy from this end and flat from this end. No matter where I cut it, it'll always be a magnet.
You cut it, wham! You're going to end up now with a North Pole, South Pole piece and a North Pole, South... There is no place where either the North Pole exists or the South Pole exists or the, what I call specifically, which is technical accuracy, the plane of inertia exists. That null point between the field modalities of mutual repulsion, which is magnetism. By the way, force and motion and magnetism are all one and the same thing. Centrifugal force divergence, force and motion, and magnetism is force and motion.
Okay, whatever. So another, what does that mean? There's nothing force in motion. Gary is great. I mean, what is force in motion? What is that? That doesn't mean anything. Oy. Oy. Oy.
There is nothing within that magnet that you can say, here's a North Pole, here's a South Pole, because it cannot be divided up. It cannot be found at that location.
Yes, that has to do with how it filters, though. See, the filtering changes as your angle changes. So if you're looking from this sideways position at all of these triangles, right, there's a point where all the slopes reflect up. And then once you start going at an angle, they start reflecting back. And then they start reflecting out. You see, so you can't, there'll always be a middle to whatever magnet you create, because there's always a middle point where it changes from going that way to changing to go that way. I mean, obviously a triangle is a little too simple for me to explain the geometry, but it's just geometry. If I made these hexagons, you'd get it even more simply. You know, if you understood that the sides were flat and then there was an edge, you know, you could get more simply that if you change your position of your look, you'll see that from the two sides it'll always bounce in the opposite direction. And that's cumulative, in the sense that the more closer you get to the center, the more guaranteed you are of that, and the further away from the center you get, the less guarantee there is of that phenomenon.
Pressure mediation within the entire whole, or in this case we got the ancient Greek word holos, okay, which once we thence derived the word holography, but none of you know about holography either. But to actually truly explain the ancient Platonic, hardcore monistic metaphysical principle of incommensurability, and don't look it up on...
So this is what people want for science. They want a bunch of metaphysical religion.
Dictionary.com, because there's a bullshit definition there that doesn't tell you anything. I'm talking about the original usage of the term incommensurability.
Right, again, so you just keep using language that there's no point in using for a concept that doesn't describe anything. It doesn't give anybody any visual, functional, mechanical thing to follow. No point, no process. No going from times 0 to times 10 and explaining to me how the phenomenon of attraction happens.
Is point non-specific pressure mediation. The only way you're going to understand what the hell magnetism is or what the hell a magnet is if you understand the principles of incommensurability, field coherency. The magnet exists before it became a magnet, when it's just a stupid piece or a lump of a ferrite or a lump of samarium cobalt or a lump of neodymium iron boron, which
right, and it really doesn't matter what it's a lump of. The point is that there's only certain atoms that can be arranged into the proper shapes to create the poles, to create more electrons on one side, more proton on the other side. There's only certain shapes of atoms that can turn into something that has a polar imbalance. Eesh.
All ceramic composites that has no magnetism within it. You know, what defines a magnet when it was turned into a quote magnet? And the only thing that's done is you actually initiated field coherency by pulsing that ceramic object to have geomagnetic precession, where you actually have a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid with conjugate.
Okay, so we have a precessional hyperboloid with precessional toroidal, whatever, convergence or something. So there's these tornado-y thingies happening or something.
To get macro field geometry of the torus and the hyperboloid. This is the conjugate nature of the universe, by the way.
Torus and the hyperboloid. So we're back to like donuts and bullshit, you know. So this is the best he'll give us as a drawing of what magnets are doing. Is they're doing some sort of donut-y thing with little spirally tornadoes coming out of the, you know. That's it. Somehow that makes two magnets repel each other. I don't think so. I'm completely unconvinced that's happening inside the magnet.
Force and motion, inertia, and acceleration. The actual geometry of force and motion, i.e. magnetism, which is one and the same thing, is the torus. You can't technically say the sphere, but we have to be very specific and talk about the torus. Now, the inverse of a torus, i.e. the donut shape, is the hyperboloid, or the hourglass shape. Okay, you know what an hourglass looks like if you turn it upside down, the sand forth? That would be the hyperboloid. If you take the negative image of the hyperboloid, you end up with the torus. You take the negative image of the torus, you end up with the hyperboloid. Right?
A negative image. That means the white space, I suppose. So if you put them in a box, you know, well, you're still left over. You still have something left over because your box has square sides, you know, so your donut won't fit in the box properly. But anyway, so it's just doing, you know, it's an infinity symbol, and then it has the hourglass of whatever, time, hope, felicity. You know, it's two infinity symbols just with different shapes, I suppose. I don't know. Donut inside of a donut.
Introductive logic, which none of you engaged in or none of you were taught, which is like a really important teaching methodology to learn and be able to expand your mind.
Yes, right, sure. You know about that. Expanding the mind just means talk shit. So, yes, you're proficient at shit talking.
It's an ancient secret that's been lost to the ages that I've rediscovered. There's actually two people rediscovered it, myself and one other person, Scott Olson. He wrote an article about it, but he still doesn't really understand it.
Yes, so he wrote about it, but he doesn't understand it, and you understand it, and you're explaining it to everyone in, you know, such wonderful, explicit detail.
Retroductive logic necessitates the correct definition of what we call magnetism, which is a divergent force vector of null plane of inertia.
Alright, so it was her hyperboloid troiloid, and now it's divergent plane of inertia thingy, whatever.
Okay? That which we call...
No, it's really not okay.
Magnetic attraction and repulsion also doesn't exist. We've already said that...
Okay, so, you know, we see what the magnets do. They don't really get smushed together, and they don't really fly apart. It doesn't really happen.
There's no such thing as a North Pole and a South Pole on a magnet. It is incommensurable. I mean, this is absolutely not my opinion. It is irrefutable and...
Okay, it's irrefutable. He has the facts. He has all the charts and the diagrams. Oh, wait a minute, he doesn't have any of those. He has all the math. No, he doesn't have the math either. He has all the fat cells that say so.
Hardcore, irreducibly so, via the logic and the given facts before us.
There you go. The logic and the given facts. Again, the fact that there is no attraction or repulsion and there's no poles on the magnet. Yeah, you know, those facts were very helpful in me understanding magnetism.
We're talking about force and counter space. What the common idiot...
Okay, so now we've changed the subject again, so now we're on force and counter space. So that's something and the counter nothing. The anti-something. Because we can't really call anything nothing.
It refers to magnetic repulsion. They take two light polarities, they try to push them together. We're talking about force vector magnification. We're talking about applying...
Force vector magnification. Now, they finally said a word that might mean something. That you could magnify the effect of something if you filter it. So if you want, like, to get all the dioxin to come out of, like, you have dioxin in water and you put it through a filter, and all the dioxin goes this way and all the water goes that way. That would be magnifying the concentrations. So that would be a way of thinking about it, that the filter magnifies the strength of the dioxin and the purity of the water.
Since we're talking about field coherency, we're actually talking about pressure. We're talking about...
No, so magnetism is just a magnet is a filter. The force goes in, mixed and messy. It comes out dioxin and water. It comes out filtered.
Pressure amplification that we have to apply an increasing, enormous, and an insurmountable force to try to press these things.
Insurmountable force. Now, obviously, it's not an insurmountable force. So that's kind of silly talk. I mean, you could make a big enough magnet where human beings might not be able to press it together by themselves just by going push, push. But clearly, it's always a surmountable force.
Together. We're talking about force of motion. We're talking about magnetism specifically. What?
Okay, now we're talking about force of motion, hypertoroids, blah, 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 blah. Just keep changing the subject, but it's supposed to be one subject, magnetism. But it's never accurately or consistently defined. Every day this is the important thing, and the next day something else is the important thing. And none of them have anything to do with attraction and repulsion, the function of a magnet.
What the common idiot refers to as magnetic attraction has nothing to do with magnetism at all.
Okay, so magnetic attraction doesn't have anything to do with magnets. Okay, bold statement. I wonder if you have some proof or evidence indicating how that's true. That it's really something else that makes magnets magnetic other than their magnetism.
It's actually a move, or technically an acceleration, towards counter space.
Okay, so it's an acceleration towards counter space. So the other magnet is fooled by the magnet into thinking it's a magnet. And it's really just moving towards counter space, which the magnet is filling to fool the thing that it was there. But it's not really there because it has no location, right? No locos. People suck this shit up. That's how dumb this planet of fucking asswipes is. Little whatever finger painters. Mental finger painting.
But magnetism is only the loss of inertia. As Faraday correctly stated,
magnetism is only the loss of inertia. So, I mean, yes, if you can't stay where you are and you have to go somewhere... I lost my staying where I am, so obviously if I lost staying where I am, I must be going somewhere. Yes, of course. Yes. If I'm leaving, I must have been going somewhere. It seems sensible if I'm leaving.
Magnetism is the quote dielectric field. They think that magnetism...
Okay, the dielectric field. So again, we have this field of the dielectric. You know, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything at all.
Is one thing, and dielectricity, which nulls out of the plane of inertia, are two different things.
Okay, dielectricity nulls out of the plane of inertia. So at least we have something. So we have electricity in the magnet going through the plane of the middle of the magnet, where the segregation process takes place. On one side, everything flies out dioxin, and below that line, everything tends to fly out water.
Is no different than the common dumbass who thinks that water is one thing and steam is another and ice is... It's all the same shit, right? Water, ice, and steam?
No, it really isn't. If you mechanically draw the atoms on a piece of paper, you'll see that they arrange completely different. That's what makes a diamond different than soot. You see, is that the atoms are specifically arranged in a specific location and a specific orientation. So you can tell the difference. It's not... Oh, I can't tell the difference. It's the same exact thing. No, it's really not exactly the same. It's quite different. That's why they're quite different. It's because they're quite differently organized.
To think that magnetism is one thing and dielectricity is another is just a perception.
Okay, so dielectricity is the same thing as magnetism. Now, before it was just doing the plane of inertia thing, but now it's the entire magnet is full of dielectricity, which really is a concept. It just really has to do with charge on insulators, essentially. Surface charge. Dielectricity is surface electricity.
Brain fart of the unevolved, stupid human mind, which...
Yes, well, I'm just saying, it takes one to know one, but, you know, you're demonstrating the high intelligence ground with this lowbrow, silly personal attacks. Oh, okay. I don't think so, actually.
Is not trained in retroduction, is not trained in metaphysics, which is not trained in...
What? Trained in what? Babble. Babble, or silly babble, or sillier babble, or ludicrous babble.
Non-linear, hardcore metaphysical thinking as, you know, all that stuff that we get so awed about, like in ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, like, wow, you know, most of you would have a brain meltdown. You tried to read even a crappy translation of Plotinus, a crappy one, much less than reading the ancient Greek, which is mind-bending. Mind-bending reading the ancient Greek Plotinus.
Right, so the old languages were just so much better than the new modern ones with all the new modern concepts. I don't think so, actually. That's why the Japanese language is like a quarter American words now, because see, it was an old language that they didn't know. They didn't have a iPad. You know, they didn't have all this stuff we have now, so we have all these new words describing all the new concepts and ways of looking at things. And so the new words are really better, more accurate.
Which is shorthand hardcore metaphysics. Not only is it dead language in ancient Greek, but it's also a shorthand and it's in metaphysics mind-bending. If you try to read even a crappy English translation of Plotinus, 99% of you would have a brain meltdown, like you popped acid.
Yeah, whatever. That just seems like bold talk from a tattooed fat man.
Or you got flat on your ass drunk. He's like, what the hell am I reading? This crap's too much! My brain!
Yeah, right. So, like I said, these are people that really hadn't figured out what a microbe was. And he thinks they had a more complex understanding of reality. They were just so fucking smart. Sorry. It's ludicrous. Theoretically, you just can't make that make sense.
That reads Plotinus too. Like, oh, read Plotinus. So, like, tell me what you think. They come back and it's like, I can't understand this shit. your mind is not even trained. It's like you're a mole. You know those little mole rats? They got little beady eyes. They're always digging in the dirt for worms. So like you bring them out to the sunlight. Oh my god! Put me back in the dirt. You're like that, and it's okay. But
like I said, so mumbo jumbo. We know what came out of the ancient past. There's a bunch of silly, idiotic fables that they turned into some sort of spiritual belief in a bunch of fucking animalistic, silly, naturalistic notions of gods and function. Complete bullshit.
your mind just can't think like that. And I'm not insulting you. Everybody's guilty of that. But yeah, retroductive logic necessitates what magnetism is, what polarity is.
Okay, so retroductive logic necessitates what a magnet is. It's not that a magnet is something and retroductive logic will make you see it. He's not even saying it right, for fuck's sake. He's saying your logic makes the magnet. You just logically say a magnet must be, and it must be a hyperboloid, because that just must be logically, and then the magnet's obedient. Now, the idea is to describe what's in the world, and clearly the ancients weren't very good at it.
Field incommensurability, or FI, it's a hard thing to explain to...
FI? Field increment... Oh, well, it's incommensurability.
People. I've used holographic analogies, but most people don't even know what a true holographic
Yes, yes, very little point in using analogies to concepts that are more complicated than the magnet. Yes, that does. And then to talk about how all Simplescus is and how old Plotinus understood it all. He understood how magnets work.
Analogy is like the incommensurability of a holism. In ancient Greek word again, holos. Some things are impossible to find. It's like some words are impossible to translate, like nous. Well, the word logos is like, you got these ancient idiots translating parts of the Bible where they use the word logos. I use the word. Logos doesn't mean word. Sure it does. Logos means word. Kind of like logo. No, it doesn't mean word. No, logos doesn't mean word. It means proportion. It means logic. Like,
it means proportion. Okay, so I go reread the Bible and find out how the change in the word makes a difference. Makes Jesus' dick bigger or something.
Context of how it was used. I'm not a relativist at all. But you have these conjugate features.
You are relatively fucking inanely stupid.
Inertia and the loss of inertia. Inertia being the
inertia and loss of inertia. Again, talking about a concept like your inertial state. It's a state you're in, your inertia. Either moving, you're not moving, you're something. But it's a state of existing in. You can't lose the state of existing in a state. You can change what state. You can go 60 miles an hour, you can go 30 miles an hour, but you can't just have inertia and then, whoops, I don't have a speed anymore. I'm not going any speed. I'm not standing still and I'm not moving. You can't not stand still or not move at the same time.
Being inertia and acceleration. So we have inertia and the loss of inertia. That loss of inertia follows an equation.
Right, psi times pi times y. Just make up some shit. 2 plus 2 plus 2.
Equation's tattooed right here on my wrist, by the way. My discovery.
Oh, yes, a discovery again that is of no value to any reasonable human being on Earth. It's only the unreasonable. It's godlike! It's shaped just like Mary's nose! That's what's going to happen here. This is just people seeing Mary in toast. This is so fucking silly. For anyone to think this has something to do with identifying reality and describing it. Oh, fuck. Idiocracy is on the move. And it's rolling a big fat donut in front of it.
actually found this discovery out by deciphering the secret in Plato's divided line of the Republic of 509D to 511, Plato's Republic.
Very interesting. So he thinks Plato knew what a fucking magnet was.
I repeat that, 509D to 511. It follows that equation. Once we end up with 5, 1, 1, and 1 over 5, which is 5 cubed.
5 cubed, 1 over 5, 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1 1. Yeah. And that's the source of all wonder in the universe. 1 1.
I could talk about hours about that.
Yes, you could make up silly crap and then draw it on your arm. Yes, we understand. Eesh. I understand that's what you're doing. Apparently the other idiots don't understand that's what you're doing. You're just doodling. You're a brain doodler.
And for example, specifically, a computer program was written to show how to turn a sphere inside out, and the max throw, interestingly, a sphere and a hyperboloid, excuse me, a sphere and a torus are close enough. We can actually say that a spatial force spectrum where space is not a thing. We're actually...
Right. Yes, there are things that are reversible, like I could take my shirt off by reversing it, you see, and it's still shirt-like, but it's not, see, yes. So a toroid could be considered an inverted sphere. That's right, you pulled one end to the other end and figurated the sphere.
Defining magnitude and volume. All magnitude is equal to force. All force is equal to magnetism. Volume, magnitude, magnetism, and force.
Volume, force, magnitude. Yeah, these are all fun words to use in silly ways. Let's just mix them up any old way and pull them out of a hat. Force, magnitude, magnitude, force, hyperboloid, force, 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 magnitude. Fun, fun, fun. We can make all kinds of silly sentences.
All one and the exact same word. They're only differentiated out by the stupid human consciousness. Force, magnetism, magnitude, volume. All...
Okay, force, magnitude, magnetism, magnitude, volume. Yeah, some of those words actually are concepts in science. So, but exactly how have you explained how a magnetism is causing a volume of attraction and repulsion? How are you explaining anything? You're not explaining anything at all. You're not describing a single fucking effect and its causes.
All that shit's one and the same thing. The computer program shows, there's many people that have actually done it with different programs that show that when you take a sphere and you turn it inside out, the max throw of the inversion of a sphere is a hyperboloid. In other words,
yes, right. You can do lots of things with geometry. You could pull the top of the triangle down, and you can make 3 triangles. I mean, you could do lots of little fun things, like cut out paper dolls out of paper. Is that science, or is that silly?
The absolute inverse of force of motion is the hyperboloid shape. Underneath the ferrocell, cell, and I have hundreds of videos on the ferrocell, cell, damn it, hundreds, you will actually see that toroid and that hyperboloid conjugate. You'll notice that the torus is black on the ferrocell. Cell. There's no light there. The only place, but you actually...
Oh, whatever. We know that it's a toy, okay? That it's a device, okay, that is manipulating the environmental circumstances and and you're not getting as straight a view of the reality as would be scientifically useful. That's it. There's causes to that effect too. You're not dissecting how this mechanism, how the glass and the fluid are actually producing the effect. Because if you did do that, you'd have to cross lots of rules of science to defend your illogical presumptions that somehow the magnetism is bending light, when it's not.
Actually see the light in a spirograph, quote-unquote spirograph-like pattern, or the hypertrochoid pattern, is the torus. Logically, it would be the case that light is being swallowed up in the hyperboloid and is being spun out to your eyeballs.
So, that makes sense to these people. Light is caught and sped up and shot to your eyeballs by magnets.
Under the geometry of the torus, and that's exactly what...
I don't think that happens.
But you see underneath the ferrocell cell and 100...
No, it's not exactly what you see under the ferrocell. Again, so you use a little bit of tricks, a little bit of mirrors to create an effect, and then you say, see, this proves something. So yes, like Tesla, you make some lightning bolts, and that somehow proves that you can send lightning to France through the atmosphere, and you can't do that.
Hundreds and hundreds of videos. And by the way, before I ever even discovered the ferrule cell existed, by its inventor Tim Vanderelli, I predicted that this must be necessitatively so. Under Occam...
Yes, well, whatever Occam's razor he's going to say. This is something to do with simplicity. No, I'm sorry. This isn't the straight line answer to the phenomenon. This is the crookedest line you could possibly make. And you made it with a device that creates crooked lines.
Occam's rule of simplicity actually make Occam's rule really, really simple. It's more complex than that. That the geometry of force of motion, inertia, and acceleration, i.e. Dielectricity and magnetism, must and can only exist under a conjugate yin and yang. I'm going to use that word. I hate to say.
Alright, so here we go again. We got a conjugate yin and yang. So now we got another concept thrown in there. There's yin and yanging going on.
Yin and yang. A conjugate relationship. Some people don't know what the hell conjugate means. What's conjugate? Kind of like light and illumination. They're inseparably one and the same freaking thing. The conjugate relation.
Light and illumination. They're the same thing. Don't even know how that there's a word for that in vocabulary. You know, words that are describing the effect of something, and then the word that describes the noun part of it, the thing that it actually is before it affects something.
Between force of motion, inertia, and acceleration exist only and can only exist as the expressions of the torus and the hyperboloid.
And so they're expressions of the torus and the hyperboloid, but we get no explanation for how that causes repulsion and attraction, which he says doesn't exist. But I mean, clearly, you know, if anybody's going to have a rational, you can't talk about attraction and repulsion, you're going to have a conversation about what magnets do, then what the hell's the point, right? I mean, isn't that too silly here somewhere, people? Come on. You know, force this guy to narrow it down a little bit. I have to be able to talk about attraction and repulsion if I want to talk about magnets, and describing how magnets create that fundamental process, which is the whole reason why we identify magnets as something different, is because of that effect. So if you're not going to talk about the thing that is fundamentally what gives it its identity, what's the point?
As one single holos, or unity. You know, holos, one, unity. Holos is really a word that should not be translated. There's like a dozen Greek words, and they're all metaphysical.
Oh, again, so who cares about any of this? I never used the word holos in my life, never had any use for it, never needs a place for it. I don't need to worry about it. Why do I have to talk about it? Why don't I even have to think about it?
Logos, holos, eristos dias, oh my god, anantie, on and on and on and on. Should not be translated.
Anantie, yeah, well, you shouldn't do that in the living room.
Translated, because they're untranslated. Exists as a holos of everything. Literally everything can only be expressed in that conjugate relation, because everything is force, motion, inertia, acceleration.
Conjugate, you know, it's like some sort of conjugate visit or something. You know, I think you've been whacking your conjugator too much.
An extrapolation of which exists within every bit of electricity and field pressure modality that we understand by fields, not the counting of those fields, as capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity. Now, capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity are only extrapolated.
You know, capacitance and resistance would frankly be the same things as permittivity and whatever the other word is. It just has to do with whether you can allow something to pass through something or not. That's what resistance is. And capacitance just has to do with how much something can store. I mean, fuck. How much it can hold.
And finer point.
Capacity. Capacitance. Capacity. Same thing.
It's the same force of motion, inertia, and acceleration, and the interplay thereof, because nothing is truly diamagnetic and nothing is truly purely magnetic, because
nothing's diamagnetic and nothing's truly magnetic. I mean, again, we clearly know that things are capable of becoming magnetized, and then they're magnetic, so this is just such crap. And then there's things that aren't very magnetizable, like copper, and then there's things that aren't magnetic at all, essentially. It's really hard to get anything at all magnetic out of them.
Magnetism is just the loss of inertia, and inertia is merely the inverse of that, and of course it comes first.
Right, so that makes sense. Again, loss of inertia. People can understand what that means. You go from going 60 miles an hour to going not stopped, but not moving. You're neither moving or going.
Like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? In this case, we could damn well say the chicken, i.e. dielectricity or inertia. Magnetism.
So dielectricity or inertia. So now they're the same thing. I don't even know how to make them the same thing.
Was only the loss of that inertia, i.e. quote-unquote the dielectric field, as Faraday said. Amazing enough, the really old dude, before all pure electrical scientific discovery was expanded, made the most accurate statement about what magnetism is. It's a dielectric field. But
yes, it's a field of segregated force. Yes, dioxin, water. Filtered. Force filtered.
I can toot my own horn and say that I'm the first person on Earth, and you can't quote Tesla, and you can't quote Victor Schauberger, and you cannot quote Walter Russell. Those three people always say, Walter Russell discovered it first, Victor Schauberger discovered it first, and none of those people wrote about the stuff that's in my book.
Right. Again, what's in his book is exactly what's in this video. Just a chain of incomprehensible rubbish that has absolutely nothing to do with any description of process. How does it work? Hyperboloid. How hyperboloid make work? Toroidal inertia lose. I mean, just an incomprehensible pile of mush.
And you people don't have access to my 4th edition. I mean, my 3rd edition, which is out free on archive.org. It's a free book, by the way. I mean, 90% of the stuff that's in it.
You will pay for it. No, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I didn't actually pay money, but my brain got hurt. Okay, so I had to pay real stuff. I mean, it was really painful to read.
That book is not anything you'll find by Schauberger, Tesla, and Walter Russell.
Well, you will find their names in it over and 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 over. And they're not saying anything. Einstein's a booger. There. Oh, yeah, that's a great argument. Yeah. I understand magnetism so much better now because I know Einstein's a booger head.
Much less the 4th, 5th, and 6th editions. None of those people, nor Eric Dollard. I had all of Eric Dollard's work. He did help me contribute to the book and my understanding of counters.
He did help me contribute to the book. Yeah. Well, anyway, we all make typos. But shit. Eric Dollard is, I don't even know why he's a something. Again, he's another guy, I'm going to give you perpetual motion and free everything and it'll all be great. And he didn't produce much, he didn't even make a mousetrap. I mean, he didn't come up with nothing. He didn't give us anything.
Based by his, titanic understanding of electrical theory, but none of those people...
Right, his titanic understanding that produced absolutely nothing. 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 Zero. Nothing.
Including Dollard, those 4 people, they're not responsible for my book. They have helped me see further, I almost said far, have helped me see further.
Far rating. Yeah, that's what I call it.
But I'm responsible for that discovery. Not you and not them.
Okay, so he discovered what exactly? The discovery of the loss of inertia, dielectric, hyperboloid, toroid counter space. Cool.
So that's where I'm going to toot my own horn, because it's my discovery.
Yes, it's a very big discovery in terms of the Sibyls, anyway. Lots of Sibyls.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to take to my grave is...
Yes, no, you're not going to... You're really not. You're going to take to your grave a lot of, just because, you have to be buried in a piano and all that stuff. But it'll be just sort of incidental, right?
Me, anyway, and it is, because what's the most fundamental principle in the universe? Well, it's magnitude and volume, which is force of motion, i.e. magnetism.
I wish we could bet on it. Yes, who's going to be correct? Me or you? I'm going to win, just let you know. Through reducto logico, I know yo. Me righty, you sillyo.
It's like, who's the first person on planet Earth that actually figured out what the hell magnetism is? It's like, it was some fat...
No, it was some long-haired, snarky firm buddy.
Tattooed bald dude. Really? Yeah, he actually figured it out first.
Yeah, you didn't. If you did figure it out, you certainly haven't explained it. So you haven't cued anybody else in on it. I'd love to just survey Ken's sycophants. You know, these silly little twatties. You know, you just love to be able to test them on their knowledge and see what kind of crap, what kind of bizarre answers they give when you ask them a question like, why do two magnets move into each other? It's just hilarious. God. That's what they'll just say. They'll just say, Plotinus made it so.
And that, Jack, is the damn fact. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, well, that sure proved it. You can bet your butter on it.
I'm going to go back in my room and continue working on my book.
Oh yeah, sure you are.
Yeah.
So he leaves the fire burning in this room, though. Oh, I don't know. Why don't you sit by the fire and write the book, Ken? Come on, you could just put your little book over here and write right over there. Yeah.
And boy, do I look deeply. I get tired of eating cheap.
Yeah, right. Preposterous thousands of dollars. Just, you people don't know anything about data preservation because, yeah, you're not willing to spend hundreds of dollars on endless hard drives. Oh, I mean, you don't know shit about cheap, fucker. My whole computer, my computer was $79. $79. Not $5,000. And mine can do fire too. It can.
Eat food too. I like steak. I like steak. Probably shouldn't eat. You always...
Yeah, so be an asshole to finish the video up. I like killing stuff. I like torturing animals because that's what Plotinus did. Because they were really smart people. No, it's because you're really fucking dumb. You can't figure out it's not nice to torture feeling creatures, you dumbass. You can't even figure that out, and you're going to be such an obnoxious cunt. Oh, I mean, shit. You know, I mean, it's one thing to be one of these, you know, these hypocrites, these